Under the relentless heat of the African savannah, a woman found herself bound to a tree, alone and utterly drained. In the distance, a pride of lions crept closer, their presence unmistakable. And then, the unimaginable occurred. Could a wild animal you once saved return to help you in your darkest hour? Could it remember you and choose to repay your kindness? Today, I'm going to share with you an incredible true story that will move you to tears and leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about loyalty and compassion. Join me as we journey from the vibrant city of San Francisco to the barren, unforgiving plains of Maasai Mara, where a single act of courage would change everything. Julia Spencer once lived in a small apartment overlooking the picturesque San Francisco Bay. Each morning, as sunlight danced across the water, she felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life she had: stable work at the Los Angeles Zoo, good colleagues, weekend coffee breaks, and spontaneous road trips along the California coast. But something inside her began to stir. Amidst this perfect life, a question began to echo louder and louder. Am I truly making the impact I always dreamed of? From a young age, Julia had a deep love for wild animals, not just because they were majestic, but because she believed each creature deserved protection, especially those on the brink of extinction. Working at the zoo gave her the chance to care for endangered species, but over time, she felt like a spectator, standing behind the bars instead of making a real difference. She didn't want to just observe. She wanted to take action. Then, one day, a friend handed her a flyer from a wildlife conservation group in Africa looking for volunteers. Julia didn't think twice. She applied and within months found herself in Kenya. Her family was concerned. Her friends were puzzled. They all asked the same question: why leave behind a comfortable life to go to such a dangerous and remote place? Julia smiled and simply replied, "Because my heart no longer belongs here." What made Julia's journey remarkable wasn't a single moment of bravery. It was the continuous, quiet decision she made every single day, waking up in the sweltering heat of 46° C, facing snakes that slithered into her tent, witnessing animal tracks, twisted snares, and the final gasps of dying creatures. Not everyone is destined to live an extraordinary life, but sometimes those who venture beyond their comfort zones are the ones who make the biggest difference. You don't have to travel to Africa to make that change. It can begin with listening to the call of your own heart. It was that heart that led Julia to a place unlike any other. No streetlights, no cell service, just the endless wind, dust, and the cold, unblinking eyes of wild creatures. And then, her first real challenge, one she never saw coming. That was when she learned her first harsh lesson and made her first major mistake. Let's go back to that moment, when one wrong step could have changed everything. The savage beauty of the savannah and the first lesson learned. The Maasai Mara Reserve was unlike anything Julia had ever experienced. By day, the sun blazed fiercely, drying the earth beneath her feet and sending dust swirling with every step. By night, the temperature plunged, and the wind carried the eerie calls of hyenas, mixed with the distant roar of lions. In the vast silence, even your breath felt cautious. Yet, amid this wild beauty, Julia felt truly alive. She had never felt so connected to the earth. But within her first week, Julia made a mistake, one that nearly cost her everything. That morning, she and her team were assigned to survey the Western Plains, an area previously marked by poaching activity. But when they reached a fork in the path, Julia spotted a herd of zebras darting across the horizon. Curiosity got the better of her, and she stepped away from the group for just a few minutes to take a photo. 5 minutes later, everything changed. The wind shifted and dust swallowed the trail. Julia realized she was lost. No GPS, no radio, no map. Just herself, standing in a vast sea of grass with no idea which way to go. Thankfully, the patrol team tracked her down an hour later, but the feeling of being completely alone in the wilderness, relying only on her instincts, stayed with her. This experience would forever be etched in her memory. Newcomers to the wild often make the same mistake. They think they can handle anything, believing the wild is beautiful and harmless, not understanding the dangers lurking beneath the surface. Julia was no different, but she was lucky. She walked away with a lesson that would shape her future. In the wild, curiosity without caution can cost you your life. That mistake didn't break her. It strengthened her. It prepared her for the challenges that lay ahead. Soon enough, that next challenge arrived. Julia received her first solo patrol assignment, a test of everything she had learned over the past 3 months. She packed her essentials: water, a map, communication gear, and self-defense tools. The sun blazed, but her mind was clear, focused, and ready. No one could have predicted that in just a few hours, her life would take an unexpected turn. A rhino in chains, and the day that changed everything. The day began with a crystal-clear sky and the sun already scorching by 7 a.m. Julia, alone in an old off-road vehicle, gripped the wheel, her helmet perched atop her head. The only sound was the wind rushing past and the crunch of tires grinding through thick red dust. This was Julia's first solo patrol. A teammate had fallen ill, leaving her to take on the route alone. The area she was assigned to had no recent reports of poaching activity, so she felt safe. But just an hour after leaving base, something caught her eye. A grey truck, half hidden in low bushes, in a place that wasn't on any patrol route. The truck had no license plate. A sense of unease crept over Julia as she approached. 2 men who climbed out, wordless and still. Julia calmly asked to check the back of the truck, and when she did, her heart stopped. Inside, a fully grown male rhino, shackled at all 4 legs, its eyes wide with fear and its body covered in sweat. Julia didn't need any further confirmation. This was a poaching operation. She turned to flee, but before she could even scream, the 2 men grabbed her, overpowered her, and moments later, Julia found herself tied to a tree deep in the bush. The heat was unbearable. Sweat poured down her face, dust clung to her skin, and her throat felt like it was on fire. Her eyes began to blur, but the worst part wasn't the scorching heat. It wasn't even the fear of being left behind. It was the helplessness of knowing that a rare, beautiful creature was being taken, likely for its horn, and that it might never see another day. But then, as hope seemed to slip away, something extraordinary happened. A deep, resonant roar echoed across the savannah. Julia's eyes shot open. From behind the tall grass, a pride of lionesses emerged, their eyes sharp and focused. They didn't attack. They simply surrounded her, then parted, and through the dust, a massive lion appeared. A scar marked his neck, but his eyes, those eyes, were unmistakable. It was him, the lion Julia had once saved nearly a year ago. In that moment, everything changed. The lion, a creature Julia had once saved, had returned to save her. It was a reminder that in the wild, where survival is key, kindness can create the strongest bond. We often think that animals can't feel gratitude, but perhaps they simply choose to remember. And in this moment, Julia's life was spared. The lion carefully clawed at the ropes, freeing her. The lion, who remembered Julia, stood there, overwhelmed with emotion. She had never believed that animals could remember in the way humans do. But as the lion gently freed her, she understood that in the wild, acts of kindness endure far longer than anyone could imagine. Julia didn't hesitate. With shaky hands, she called in the poaching incident. Within 40 minutes, local police and conservation forces arrived. The poachers were quickly apprehended. Julia led the team, following the tire marks left in the sand. The criminals had no chance. But what happened to the rhino? Was it saved? The rescue wasn't over. The rhino, exhausted and shaken, was carefully tended to and, after a few days of recovery, was released back into the wild. A second chance. Julia stood on the edge of the reserve, watching the rhino return to the wild, free. Her heart swelled with a deep sense of accomplishment. It wasn't just about saving one life, it was about the power of kindness, the impact of memory, and the strength found in the most unexpected places. That night, Julia sat by her window, writing in her journal. She reflected on two things she once thought impossible: a lion returning to save her, and a rhino free after a second chance at life. Julia smiled as she closed her notebook. Outside, the world was quiet, but the amber eyes of a wild animal flickered in the distance, not afraid, but grateful. Discover an unforgettable tale of survival, loyalty, and the power of kindness in the wild. In the heart of Africa's savannah, a woman faces a life-or-death situation, only to be saved by a creature she once saved herself. Join Julia Spencer as she embarks on a transformative journey from the safety of San Francisco to the rugged, unforgiving beauty of Maasai Mara.